Queen has revealed the government's plan for the year ahead, including an online safety bill to tackle harmful and illegal content, new powers for the police over protests and a shake-up of the planning and building systems in England.
Animal welfare also highlighted to tackle issues like puppy smuggling and the export of live animals. And George Eustice, the Environment Secretary, joins us now.
Morning.
George, nice to see you. I think this is the first time I can remember a Queen's speech that is being covered as much for what's not in it as for what is. And can I just run through some of those? Nothing on social care, nothing on post-Brexit employment bill, Northern Ireland veterans, peace and reconciliation, help for renters, the repeal of the Vagrancy Act, better protection on cladding. All of those things were trailed as being in the Queen's speech, and they're just set out now as vague possibilities for the future. And yet you are bringing in proposals to curb protest, voter ID, about which there are massive suspicions, judicial review, and on levelling up, it feels to me like it's a very good slogan, but without a policy plan.
Well, look, I don't accept that. We've got a full manifesto. You'll know there's several sessions in a Parliament. We're into the second session now, and there's over 30 bills in here covering a range of issues, many of them delivering on those manifesto commitments. And the Prime Minister's been clear that on adult social care and how we fund care in old age, we're going to be setting out our proposals on that later this year.
George Eustice, sorry to interrupt.
A white paper.
Can I just ask, when he stood on the steps of Downing Street as Prime Minister in 2019, Boris Johnson said you already had a plan for social care. So why is it still only at the proposals stage? Where was the bill?
Well, when the Prime Minister made those comments on Downing Street, he obviously didn't know what lay ahead of him. And, of course, we had all of the rancour over Brexit at the end of the last Parliament, which took all of the bandwidth. No one could get anything done. There was then a general election, and straight after that, we've had to contend with the coronavirus pandemic. And it's the Department for Health and Social Care that's responsible for this area, and they've had rather a lot on their plate over the last 18 months.
Well, you say that you couldn't think of anything else. You've thought of proposals to introduce voter ID, which a lot of people are concerned about because they think if you have to produce an ID to vote, you're going to discourage people from voting. And you've introduced laws to recognise animals as sentient beings. I mean, you know, governments have bandwidth, don't they? You can't say that COVID stopped you thinking about everything.
Yes, but those are bills covered by other departments. So animal welfare is very much something that the department I represent has been dealing with, and voter ID is not covered by the Department for Health and Social Security. They're the ones that have had quite a lot of
George,
pressure
that's not
on
the
their
point.
time.
That is not the point that was being made, is it? The point is about whether you're actually creating legislation for problems that don't exist, like electoral fraud, and you're avoiding legislation on the really difficult issues. So you talk about delivery and getting things done, you're not getting the big things done. And Brexit, you're not doing the employment bill, which was promised, and you still haven't sorted out the mess in Northern Ireland.
Well, look, I think these things are important, and they were in our manifesto. We had the incident in Tower Hamlets in 2015, concerns around electoral fraud. And look, Northern Ireland has required photo ID since 2003. Tony Blair introduced
that. For very
that.
obvious reasons, George. You know that.
It's not caused any particular problems.
Well, it's actually caused the problem in terms of turnout,
which has dropped in every Northern Ireland election since photo ID was introduced.
And on that, can I also ask you, George, do you not think that what we saw yesterday at Ballymurphy underlines just how sensitive this peace process is at the moment and why that issue of the border that was Boris Johnson again said never would happen over his dead body, like the bulldozers at Heathrow, like the voter ID, and it's still not getting the attention from the top of government that it needs to resolve those issues with the European Union?
Well, it is. Indeed, Lord Frost was in Northern Ireland yesterday, met business representatives. And yes, of course, we want to work with the European Union through those specialised committees to try to improve the way the Northern Ireland Protocol works. It was a difficult circle to square. We all know that what happens in Northern Ireland and around the Irish border dominated a lot of the discussion on Brexit. In the end, the Northern Ireland Protocol was the best solution that we could agree on, but there are some issues with it, and we need to iron those out through that committee process.
But isn't this why people are so suspicious when we had Boris Johnson 22 months ago saying, I've got a plan for social care? He's then got a plan that's going to keep the Northern Ireland not separated from the United Kingdom, there won't be all these sort of difficulties for trade and business. And now that he's got Brexit done, the problems are coming through and you don't appear able to address them.
Well, we are addressing them. So Michael Gove had negotiated some easements around the need for export health certificates and other issues as well. Quite a lot of this is in my area in sort of food and drink sectors. And we are now, working on more digital solutions to get this paperwork processed so that we can have smoother processes. So we are working on these. It's not always newsworthy. It's quite dry, actually. But all of these regulations that have to be implemented are being worked on.
But surely, when you've got this big message about the people's priorities, you have to accept that a lot of the real people's priorities have been ducked, and things that aren't nearly as important, like the voter ID, like the mayoral election, like Boris Johnson taking back the power to call the election, they're not people's priorities, George. You know that.
Well, look, in any legislative programme, you will have bills that might be seen as smaller bills, but address important issues, improve our law. And then you do get those big flagship ones. So the Environment Bill is another big one that I'm dealing with. It sets out a whole governance framework for environmental management going forward with ambitious targets to turn that around and get things like biodiversity and water quality finally moving in the right direction.
George, you did the job for David Cameron that I used to do for Tony Blair, and you'll have noticed that he's on quite a lot of the papers today, probably in a way that he wouldn't want to be. Are you still advising David or trying to help him? And also, even if you're not, what do you think he should do to try to get through this rather unseemly mess that he's landed himself in?
Well, look, I'm not advising David Cameron at all. I stepped back, and Andy Coulson stepped in, and the rest is history. But I kept in touch with David Cameron from time to time. And look, I think he's doing the right thing here. He's going to be appearing before a committee, as always in these sorts of things. You get lots of parliamentary inquiries. The current Prime Minister has obviously set up the review by Nigel Boardman that's going to sort of look at all of these issues. But I think on all of this, you have to step back and ask an important question, which is not really who did ministers talk to or who tried to reach out and contact them. It's did they suffer any undue influence from that person? And I don't think any of them did. I mean, in the end, David Cameron was given no special favours. The business he represented went bust and it didn't get any access to any government support.
Well, thank you for answering all those questions. I have to say, George, I will say, I can see why they put you out on a difficult Queen's Speech Day. That's a compliment, by the way.
Too many years doing the same job as you, Alistair.
Yeah.
Nice
George Eustice, thanks very much indeed.